All right, guys, let's talk about how to analyze the comps. The comps are not the competition. The comps are the comparable sale properties in the area. And so this is at a point where you're probably ready to put in an offer. And there's a lot of other things to consider other than the comps when you're putting in an offer, such as, are there other buyers looking at the property? Are there other offers already in? Do they expect other offers coming in? And you might be able to get some information out of the listing agent when you are trying to put that offer in, if you have gone about asking those must ask questions that we have discussed in one of the other chapters. But now you're at the point in you've gotten that other information in your head. You understand where you are with regards to the competition and what the owner is looking for, but you want to just make sure that the comps are in the same price range, because you want to get a good sense as to whether or not the appraisal is going to match your purchase price and the offer price, whatever it might be. And it could be that it will, that they're very well underpriced. It could be that they're very well overpriced. And it could be that the asking price is spot on. And so depending on what your offer is going to be, you want to know if an appraiser is likely to give you a good appraisal and allow you to basically get the full amount of your offer funded by the bank. And so, in analyzing the comps, what I typically do is I go through what an appraiser is going to look at when they're appraising a property. And so this is a typical appraisal report. And I've cut out some of the meat. I've cut out some of the other stuff and I left you with the meat here, so you can understand what they're really looking at. And what they're doing is they're comparing the subject property, the property that you are going to be putting in the offer, to 3 or more comparable properties that have sold recently. And how recently is really up to the appraiser, but typically we want to stay within the last 6 months. And the more recent, the better, because the more recent shows how the times and the economic times have shifted and what's really going on now. And ideally, what the appraiser is going to look at is they want to be able to tell the bank and justify your price to the bank to say that, yes, some other buyers might be willing to pay the exact same amount as Joe, because the bank is worried that if they lend this money to Joe for this purchase price and Joe stops paying the bank back, is the bank going to be able to foreclose and sell it at, let's say, 85% of that purchase price and still be able to make their money back? Okay. And that's really what the bank is worried about. And that's what the point of an appraisal is to justify it to the bank that other people would be willing to spend that same amount of money on this type of a house in this neighborhood. And, and that will satisfy the bank's needs. So we want to make sure that the appraiser has the same ammunition in order to justify that to the bank. So they're going to go through all this stuff. They're going to go through the proximity of these comparables to the subject property, how much the bedrooms and bathrooms are, the counts are they comparable? So if the subject property has 3 beds, do these other comparable properties have 3 beds, or do they have 4 or 2? And if they have a different amount of bedrooms or bathrooms or square footage or any of these other things, if it's not exact, then there are going to have to be adjustments made. And we get to, after all these adjustments are made, we get down to the bottom where you can see that the adjusted sale price here at the bottom, which unfortunately it's not letting me show you this, but it's right at the bottom. The last 2 lines there are the adjusted sale prices of the comparisons. And that's what the appraiser is going to get at, is to see the adjusted sales price of the comparisons, to say, yes, it is going to be roughly the same as the subject property. And what they're going to do is what I'm going to walk you through in order to get a sense of the comps that they're going to use. So let's assume that this is the house for sale that is the one that you're putting in the offer on. And it's in Hawthorne, and it's listed for $798. It's 3 beds, 2 bath, and it's about 1,200 square feet. And also, you can see here that the updates have not yet really been made. It's not as modern of a house. I like to judge the conditions of the interior based on a scale of 1 to 3, a 3 being the highest, where it's like a brand new property or just completely remodeled property, a 1 being a complete tear down. This would be something in the middle where it looks like it's around a 2. Maybe it's, depending on how it was when I walked the property, which the appraiser will do as well. They're going to walk the property. I would say it's probably somewhere around a 2, maybe a 2.3 because it has an upgraded bathroom. That's sort of the rate of the interior that I would give it, is about a 2.3. So what we're going to do is we're looking at focusing on just Hawthorne. And so we can see Hawthorne's zip code here is going to be 90250. And so what we're going to type in, what I'm going to try to type in is 90250. And it's going to circle in on the Hawthorne area here, which is exactly what we want to do. Because remember, we want to focus on proximity. And proximity means how close is the subject property to these comps. So 90250 is exactly what I want to see. Now, I don't want to see for sales. I want to see sold. And I want to see sold within the last 6 months. Ideally, it'll be sooner than that. So we can always adjust that later. And ideally, we're looking at this property here, which is at 11807 Shanera Avenue. Now, if we look at the map as to where that's located in Hawthorne, we can find that is actually just above the 105, just north of the 105, which, even though it's in the same zip code, the rest of Hawthorne is really over here. So it's not in a prime area of Hawthorne. So we have to keep that in mind as well. You'll also notice it's right next to the airport here. Okay. So we need to figure out, we can't really compare it to other sales that are over here, certainly not this part of Hawthorne, which is away from the airport as well. We really need to find properties that were sold in Hawthorne, north of the 105, in this little area that are probably south of Imperial Highway. In order to do that, we need to focus our search right over here. This is going to be our prime search location, because in order for us to really say that it's a comparable property to our subject, we have to say that all of the other living factors are the same, right? We can't compare the living factors of this area with something of this area. It just doesn't work. Now, if there was nothing available, you might be able to do that. And by the way, for condos, they're really going to want to look within the sales of that complex. More so, even if they have to look back more than 6 months, they want to look at the sales of that complex more than they're going to want to look everywhere else, because of this very point. The living situation within that complex is probably going to be a lot different than the living situation of even a different complex right next door. So that complex is very important. They're probably going to want to have at least one comp from within that complex. So that's important to keep in mind if you're searching for condos. This is also why homes tend to appreciate more than condos, because condos will go up based on the sales of their own building or their own complex, whereas the house prices can go up based on any home within, a mile radius of its, of that property, or even within its own zip code. So that's important to keep in mind. So this is going to be one, right over here. I'm going to draw it out with our map. This area is going to be, oops, I don't know why it stopped me from doing that. This area is going to be my prime search area. These are the homes that I'm going to want to use to focus my comparisons on. And now we can start to take a look. Well, we have a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1192 square feet. And remember that our property here has 3 beds, 2 bath, and 1192 square feet. So this might be a good one to use as a comparable. We could take a look at the pictures and see, is it also around a 2 or a 2.3? Let's take a look at the interior. Yeah, it doesn't look so far off. I'd say this is closer to, maybe it has marble countertops as opposed to tile. It's a little bit more updated. It might be closer to a 2.5 than a 2.3, but it's pretty darn close. So this is a very good comp to our subject property. Now we can look through others. Here's a 3-bed, 2-bath that sold December. And so, we're in December, at the end of December. This one sold in September at $770. This one sold in December at $640. Well, what's going on with this interior? Well, it looks like this is definitely closer to a 1.5, and that's why it sold for so much less. I wouldn't necessarily say I'd use this comp because it's a 1.5. It's closer to a tear down than it is like a move-in ready, just not fully fixed up. This one sold at the end of November, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1192. Doesn't have any pictures. You got to think that when it doesn't have pictures, it's probably nothing to show on the inside. That's usually the opinion I go by. Here's some pictures. This one looks nice. This one, no pictures of the interior. It's great looking outside, but it doesn't show anything on the inside. I'm going to assume that's close to a 2. Or 2.5, maybe even, depending on what the interior actually looks like. But it's going to be hard for the appraiser to know unless they have access to some of the pictures there. This one, again, yeah, you know what? It's got an upgraded bathroom as well. It's not, the kitchen's pretty nice. It's not bad. So I'm going to say this is closer to a 2.5 or even a closer to a 2.7 maybe. But this one is a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,390. So it's it's about 100 square feet bigger. Within 5 to 10% of the subject property is not so bad. So 10% of the subject property is 119 square feet. So it's pretty roughly the same. Excuse me. And so it's within, 200 square feet. It's not so bad. 800,000 versus the 798. I'd say that this is pretty good to use as a comp. So we're seeing that a lot of the other sales, this was in July, this was in September, this was in September, this was sold by Redfin, but this is a 4-bed and it's 1,800 square feet. So I wouldn't count this one in. I wouldn't count this one in. This one was 700. So we want to consider it, but it's also a probate sale. And so there's a little bit different things going on with this one. I would say that it's probably not a good comp for it for those reasons. This one in August, this one 3-bed, 2-bath, 1192 sold in August. I think what was happening is that the prices were higher earlier in the year. They started to come down. It looks like this 798 might be a good price. It might be a little high, but that's what the appraiser is going to look at it. And you're going to have to take your best judgment to see if you're willing, if there's enough ammunition, so to speak, backing you up to put in 800 for this house. I would say absolutely go for it. In my opinion, I say 800 is definitely a good price for this. I don't think you're going to be able to overbid on this. I think overbidding on this property, if you had competition, you might have trouble with an appraisal. That's my firm belief because I don't see any of these prices going over 800. As a matter of fact, I see them being worth more than this subject property a little bit, right? Because some of them are nicer or have more square footage, and they're being sold for the same price. That means that this house is actually worth a little less, maybe 20,000 or so less. It's not a big deal, but you do want to keep that in mind. If they were going to make you go to 850, I don't think the appraisal is going to come up there. I really don't. So that would be my biggest concern. Now, we always have the appraisal contingency to back us up. And so if we did put in 850 and the appraiser didn't allow it, right? An appraiser is a person. So some people, they have different feelings on different things. So you never know what appraiser you're going to get. But you can roll the dice based on your own feelings, or you can think maybe you're going to be lucky. Sometimes an appraiser will say, hey, look, they have 5 offers on this place. He had to go up to 850. So yeah, I do think that other people would be willing to put in 850 because we had 3 or 4 other offers at 850. So, the appraiser might say that that's a justification to the lender. If they justify it, great, and you've got the 850 and you can go forward with the purchase at that number. And if they don't, you can always back out, get your earnest money back, and it's not a big deal. So you want to keep that in mind. And you also want to keep in mind how much different the difference of $20,000 or $10,000 makes in your offer, right? A lot of people are very worried about that huge difference between 800 and 810. But the reality is depending on the interest rate, that might only be $50 a month difference, or less, or more. You'd have to talk to your lender to see how much that $10,000 is going to adjust your monthly payment, because there's a very good chance it will only adjust it for a few dollars a month. Is it worth haggling over the $10,000 if it's easily affordable and it gets you that home that you're really wanting? The $10,000 in the long run is not the issue. In the long run, it's the $30 a month or the $50 a month or the $200 a month that price change is going to make for you. That's what you need to be focused on. So if you can get away with it in the appraisal and get that house under contract, that's the most important thing, because I think in the long run, you end up spending more if you don't take that, if you don't push yourself to take that extra $10,000 or $20,000 and spend now. If you wait and you can't find the right home again for 6 months, and now the prices have gone up and the interest rates have gone up, now it's going to cost you a lot more than that $20,000 might have 6 months earlier. So keep all of those things in mind, but this is exactly how an appraisal works. Again, they're going to go through all of these different types of things. They're going to adjust it, the square footage differently. If they didn't have enough homes with a 3-bed, 2-bathroom, they're going to take a 4-bed, 3-bath and adjust it downward as well and say, hey, the extra bedroom's worth 20 grand and the extra bathroom's worth 25. And the extra 500 square feet is worth another, $50,000. Whatever it is, they're going to adjust that price down, and they're going to get to that bottom line number of the adjusted sales price for that comparable to see if that home that's actually a 4-bed, 3-bath with 2,000 square feet was, in fact, a 3-bed, 2-bath with 1,200 square feet. Would it be around the same $800,000 mark? And that's how that all works. So again, as I noted at the bottom, if there are extras, if there's a pool or a spa, or if it has a view, or if there's some crazy good features about that home that makes it different than the subject property, they're going to put that in the report as well. And it's going to adjust the price. So keep those things in mind as well when you are doing your comp analysis in order to help figure this out. This is really where a realtor would come in handy. This is where, if you have questions about it, you can bring it to our weekly meetings and we can discuss what's in your comp reports and see if we can help you out and, figure out what the offer price might, or should be. But again, you have that contingency in place. So if you need to make the offer, make the offer. If it doesn't work out with the appraisal, you can always pull out later, or you can still figure out a way to go forward maybe. But that's what you want to try to figure out and do. And that's the best way that you can approach it if you're in tight competition and you need to get things done quickly. Make the offer that you think you can afford, right? You don't want to put the $850 down if you can't afford that monthly payment. But if you can afford that monthly payment for $850 and you're not sure if the appraiser is going to approve it, put it down, send in that offer, and wait to see what the appraiser says. It's just like not putting in the offer. Don't discount yourself out. Let somebody else do that for you. Go after the home that you want, as long as you can live with the parameters if everybody else says yes. Hope that helps, and I'll see you in the next video.